Hey, so welcome back. Today I was going to do a review on a knife I've had for about 9 months or so now at this point, a Chris Reeve Mnandi. Um, like I said, had this about 9 months or so. This was something that I had kind of hemmed and hawed about whether or not I was going to go ahead and buy this. And finally, after jonesing over it for a while, I decided, okay, well, I guess I'll take the plunge. So this is a Mnandi with the Thuya. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Uh, Obviously, it comes with the S35V and has a titanium frame on it. I'm trying to find the thing here, and they call it the Thuya Burl as far as the particular thing on it there. Comes in, this a reasonably decent box here. When you first get it, comes with a cleaning cloth that feels kind of like suede. Um, has a little leather pouch that comes with it that you can carry the knife with. Also a tool and a little bit of grease for the bushing and the pivot point. All reasonably nice, packaged up okay when it shows up. I can get this to close. The knife itself isn't all that big, relatively speaking. Try to get this to sit so that maybe the glare doesn't totally get at everyone. The blade itself is near to about 3 inches, thereabouts, and the body itself is maybe about 3 3/4-ish or so. When it's all folded up, give or take, that same sort of thing, about the 3 3/4, thereabouts. And the blade, when it's open, is a little over 1/2 inch at its widest point, thereabouts. All in all, pretty compact knife. And as a comparison, I have a trusty Vantage Small here that I think probably these are pretty common. Everybody's seen one of these, and so you can have a pretty good idea in terms of the difference in size-wise or whatnot. They're actually pretty similar in terms of their size and overall length. And as usual for my other knife ones that I've done, I also have one of these little Victorinox there, and I'll use that primarily to show you that it's actually pretty thin, relatively speaking. I'll try to get this to line up a little bit. The thickness of it is just about the same thickness as the light here. I'll try to adjust this a little bit, not have the shadow so much, but the thickness is about the same. The clip itself is obviously a little bit different, but the thickness of the body itself is just about what one of these is, and these are pretty ubiquitous, so that will give you a sense of the size of the thickness of it. The clip, as you can see, is one of the first things that you begin to get an understanding of how they've approached this knife. With the buck, it is a folded over piece of sheet metal and attached with a few screws, and it works just fine. It's kind of spring steel or whatnot, but not much to it, relatively speaking. The Mnandi, this is actually a machined piece. It is all one solid piece all the way along and engraved. I'll try to get this so the glare doesn't get it. It's got a few scratches on it because I've obviously been wearing it, but when it showed up, obviously had none of that. But this is one solid piece, and it has a bit of like a stepped approach in the bottom part here, and it grabs on real tight, hangs on to a pair of jeans if you're going to clip it to things. Let me slide this out of the way. So overall, the knife, when it shows up, was really pretty well done. This is my first Chris Reeve knife, and it's really well put together. They spent a lot of time on doing everything. When you take a few moments to look at it, things like this edge all along here is a perfectly matte finish, and yet the body itself, I think the sheen you can see, this flat part here all along there is actually relatively polished. So it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition. Same on this. This is the matte finish. The connection in between here is a kind of a beveled piece in there. This body part is titanium, and this is, of course, a liner lock. The liner itself, when it locks up, it doesn't slide all the way across on the bottom of the blade, but it locks up remarkably tight. There's no movement at all. It's very, very tight, as you would expect. All the little nooks and crannies are all machined out very well. One of the things that you hear about, read about, is the scale, rather than just being mounted to the top of the liner, essentially here. It's actually routed out a little bit underneath so that the scale sits into a little bit of a cavity. Can you really tell that when you're looking at this? No, not particularly. But they do take the time to go through, and attention to detail in that regards is there. The little button here has the screw is set into it on this side, and on this side, I don't know if I'll be able to make that to see. It has the typical C and the R, the little logo carved into it. The blade itself is polished, smooth. You probably can't see it, and I don't know that I'll be able to make it. There's fine striations there from that before they do their final polishing, and giving it that little bit of texture like most knives have. Very well done. A little bit of a notch here for your thumb to go in, and at the top of the blade there are a series of little grooves so that if you were holding it, you can get some traction on it. These are machined in, they're cut in, they're really quite crisp, nicely done. Maybe not coming up entirely because of the fine detail, but they are there. It all looks really nice. The blade itself is polished all the way around. Chris Reeves talks about in an older video, I guess the actual man himself, he's not so much involved with the company anymore, but there's an older video that he talks about the blades after they are mostly finished. They then go through a machine that sands over them and makes them straight and flat to an exceptional degree. Again, that's one of those things. Can you tell when you're looking at this or using this? No, you really can't. It works fine. The blade comes really quite sharp from the factory and holds an edge well. But this is a small knife. This isn't really something you're going to do a lot of heavy cutting with. So worrying about whether or not there might be ever so slight a curve in the blade, is this something you're going to look down and go, wow, that is remarkably straight. Good grief, look at that. That is so flat. It's not even off by, a thousandth of a millimeter or whatever it is. No, you're not going to notice that at all. What you will notice is that it's nicely done. All of the details appear to be somebody put some time into it. The polishing, the finishes, the wood itself is pretty enough on this. This is a kind of a pretty burl on it. It's not one of the rarest or the most expensive exotic woods. The blade on this being the standard kind of stainless steel, even though it's the SV35. So it holds an edge real well, and it works well. Some people have waxed poetic about the feel of how the blade pivots in and out, that this is almost hydraulic and very smooth. The truth is, yes, it is quite smooth when you get it. It feels like they've probably done a bit of polishing on the bushing, and it comes and it's I'm sure oiled or greased, and it works just fine. But to be honest with you, is it something that you'll sit there and go, wow, that's amazing? I don't know. I mean, taking like the old buck for what it's worth, and this one is a bit scratched up and has seen quite a bit of use over the years. This one, when it first gets here, is a little tight, and it takes a little while to move the blade in and out and kind of wear it in a little bit. But after you do that and you take it apart and you clean it out and then grease it, I usually use gun lube, gun oil on on the blades, this becomes really quite smooth, and you don't really feel any friction in it particularly. And so this, yeah, takes the better part of a year before it feels like this does right out of the box. But this doesn't feel so amazing that you sit there and you go, wow, that's just fantastic, and I can't believe it. You know, this Benchmade, something like that, will have that same sort of feel in operation quick enough when you're using it. Now, this particular one here, I don't know, I'll try to get this to focus, has the Boss heat treating and is an S30V. The, as the box says, this is an S35V. And so what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know that anybody really knows, unless you were like an engineer and you were be able to, split hairs about some element of the hardness of the metal. I have no reason to believe that it probably doesn't have some element of being a little bit harder, but let's be honest, in everyday use, no. The difference between S30V and S35 sounds like something that would be dreamed up in a marketing department and would be the kind of inconsequential difference that only a marketing person could really think matters. For most people, you aren't going to make any difference. It isn't going to make any difference when you're going out and cutting things. This isn't a heavy-duty cutting knife. You're not going to be using this for really tough things that you're going to be cutting. So S30, S35, it's kind of like saying your amp goes up to 11. Really doesn't matter as far as I can tell at all. One of the things that people talk about a lot, and I will try to get this in here to show you, is elements of whether or not the blade lines up in between the liners on this type of a knife, and it does. It looks to be just about perfectly centered, especially with the little bushing here, or the piece that goes in between the two liners, which is machined in such a way that it has a bit of a waist in the middle of it. It really would show if it didn't line up, because that has a bit of a carved out center of it, and the blade does. It lines up very smoothly in the middle there. And again, they go through a lot of effort evidently to make the blade perfectly straight, but I can tell you that if you were to look at the buck knife and look down the length of the blade, you're not going to sit there and go, yeah, geez, look at the bevel or look at the warp on that. No, this blade doesn't appear to be anything but smooth and straight, and for all intents and purposes works just fine for everything you're doing. Having said that too, you can look at the size of the two blades. The Mnandi has a bit of a bevel on the top and has been polished, but the buck is actually a relatively thicker blade by a good deal, interestingly enough. And I keep going back to the buck a little bit as a comparison, because this is about a third of the price of this, and that's ultimately one of the things for me that is, I guess, kind of my downside for the Chris Reeve. A good rule of thumb that I try to do with something like this is give it to somebody who isn't really so into knives or that type of a thing, and say, hey, what do you think of this? And I've had a few people pick it up, and they'll look at it, and they'll open the blade, and and they'll kind of give it a once over, and they'll go, well, the wood's kind of pretty. It looks really nice. Everything, with all the polishes and the finishes, looks good. And then you tell them what it costs, and they're like, it doesn't look that good. It's very nice, but I don't know that it really is anything that makes me go, ooh and ah, like that just stands out and makes me go, this is really an amazing piece of craftsmanship. I know that a lot of time went into this. I know that a lot of work went into it. You can see that absolutely. It is smooth. It does work when you open up the blade really well. All the finishes are perfect. Everything is polished really well. A lot of attention to detail with this. I get that. But is it 3 times a knife on the buck? No, I can't say that it is. This, to me, costs about $400 in this configuration with the standard blade. And then if you wanted to get one of the Damascus blades, and some of the different Damascus blades look fantastic. They look like they would be, really, really eye-catching. This to me at $400 should come with one of the Damascus blades. My assessment for what little it's worth would be this is about a $200 knife. At about $200 you can say, well, I can see how they put a bunch of time into it. They've fussed over a bunch of the details and did a lot of that stuff. At $300, I'd say, okay, you're buying into the hype a little bit. Maybe you're willing to say, I want a Chris Reeve. I know it's expensive, but I want what I consider to be pretty much the best, and I want something where someone's really been fussy about it. But at $300, I would say you're beginning to buy into the hype. It's beginning to be nothing but hype. At $400, no, I can't recommend this knife. It's a really nice knife. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the price. It's all about the price. It's only about the price. The knife's too expensive. And to have to pay another like $200 to get a Damascus blade on it or whatnot, that to me, the Damascus blade on this would make this really look fantastic. It would make you go, wow, look at that. That's awesome. At $400, I just can't say that this is worth it. Beautiful knife, well done, but not worth the cost of it. I'm sorry. So I'd be curious to hear what your experiences have been with this. That's about all I have for today. Put a comment in below. Please don't put anything in there and say like, oh, well, you're an idiot. You don't have any idea what you're looking at or whatnot. I get it. If you're happy with it and you like the knife, that's awesome. Perfect. They have plenty of them that they make, and they're happy to sell them to you. And I don't begrudge anybody it. I'm just telling you my opinion of it. Otherwise, yeah, let me know what you think. Any questions you might have, I'd be happy to answer them. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.